The date was March 15th, 1963. The place, a dimly lit basement in Harlem, and Bumpy Johnson was about to do something that would make him a legend, for reasons nobody expected. He wasn't there to run numbers. He wasn't there to collect money. He was there to save a life. But here's what makes this story insane. The man whose life he saved, Malcolm X, never publicly thanked him, never mentioned his name, never acknowledged what happened that night. And Bumpy Johnson, the most powerful gangster in Harlem, never asked him to. But before we get into why Malcolm X needed saving and what Bumpy did that night, you need to understand something crucial about 1963.
You need to understand the impossible position Malcolm X was in, the enemies circling him, and why even someone as powerful as Malcolm needed help from the underworld. Hit that like button right now because this story gets darker and more twisted than you can imagine. Malcolm X wasn't always Malcolm X. He was born Malcolm Little in Omaha, Nebraska. His father was killed when Malcolm was 6 years old. His mother was committed to a mental institution. Malcolm ended up in foster care, then on the streets of Boston and New York, running cons, dealing drugs, stealing. In 1946, he was arrested for burglary and sentenced to 10 years in prison. That's where everything changed. In prison, Malcolm discovered the Nation of Islam. He discovered Elijah Muhammad. He discovered a purpose bigger than himself. When he got out in 1952, Malcolm Little became Malcolm X, and he started preaching. By 1963, Malcolm X had become the most visible spokesman for the Nation of Islam. He was on television, he was in newspapers, he was drawing crowds of thousands.
White America saw him as dangerous, radical, threatening. Black America was split. Some saw him as a prophet. Others saw him as too extreme, too angry, too willing to preach violence. But here's what most people didn't know. By early 1963, Malcolm X was starting to have doubts about Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. He was hearing rumors, disturbing rumors about Elijah Muhammad's personal life, about financial improprieties, about the organization he'd devoted his life to being built on lies. Malcolm hadn't gone public with these doubts yet, but people inside the nation were starting to suspect, and that made Malcolm X dangerous to them. When you become a threat to an organization like the Nation of Islam, an organization built on absolute loyalty and total obedience, you don't just get fired, you get eliminated. Malcolm X didn't know it yet, but by March of 1963, there were already people inside the nation discussing what to do about the Malcolm problem. That's where Bumpy Johnson enters the story. Now, Bumpy and Malcolm knew each other. They'd met in the late 50s at a restaurant in Harlem. Despite coming from completely different worlds, they'd developed a mutual respect. Malcolm respected Bumpy's intelligence and his genuine love for Harlem. Bumpy respected Malcolm's dedication and his refusal to bow down to anyone. They weren't friends exactly, but they had an understanding. So when Bumpy started hearing whispers in March 1963, whispers that certain people in the Nation of Islam were talking about Malcolm, talking about him being a problem that needed solving, Bumpy paid attention. Bumpy had sources everywhere. He had informants in churches, in social clubs, in the Nation of Islam itself. People talked to Bumpy because he paid well and because he protected his sources absolutely. On March 12th, one of Bumpy's sources came to him with specific information. There was going to be a meeting on March 15th. Malcolm X would be there, and certain members of the nation's security apparatus would also be there with instructions to send Malcolm a message, a violent message. The source didn't know if they planned to kill Malcolm that night or just hurt him badly enough to scare him into silence, but either way, it was happening in 3 days. Most gangsters would have stayed out of it. Religious politics, internal Nation of Islam business, that wasn't Bumpy's concern. But Bumpy saw something bigger. Malcolm X, whatever you thought of his politics, was important to Harlem. He gave people pride. He gave them dignity. He stood up to the white power structure in ways nobody else would.
If Malcolm got killed or beaten in some internal power struggle, Harlem would lose something it couldn't afford to lose. So Bumpy made a decision. He was going to intervene. But he had to do it carefully. The Nation of Islam wasn't some street gang. They had discipline, organization, and true believers willing to die for the cause. Bumpy couldn't just show up with guns. That would start a war that would tear Harlem apart. He needed to be smart. He needed to use information and leverage, just like he'd done with Lucky Luciano 11 years earlier. On March 13th, Bumpy went to see a man named Theodore. Theodore was a mid-level official in the Nation of Islam, someone Bumpy had helped in the past when Theodore's nephew got in trouble with some loan sharks. Theodore owed Bumpy a favor. They met in a park. Bumpy was direct. "I hear there's something planned for Malcolm." Theodore's face went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't insult me," Bumpy said calmly. "I'm not asking you to betray anyone. I'm asking you to tell me who's organizing it." Theodore looked around nervously. "If I tell you this, we're even." "More than even," Bumpy assured him. Theodore leaned in close. "Captain Joseph. He's been given orders from higher up. He's putting together a team to confront Malcolm at the meeting on the 15th. They're going to accuse him publicly of betraying the nation, and then things are going to get physical." "How physical?" Theodore shook his head. "I don't know. Maybe just a beating. Maybe more. Captain Joseph has been saying Malcolm is a traitor, and traitors don't deserve mercy." Bumpy nodded slowly. "Where's this meeting happening?" Theodore told him. "A basement meeting room at a community center on 135th Street. Bumpy thanked him and walked away. Now he knew who, when, and where, but he still needed a plan. That night, Bumpy met with his most trusted people. Illinois Gordon, his lieutenant, Junie Bird, his enforcer, Nat Pettigrew, his strategist. He told them what he'd learned. "We're going to stop it," Bumpy said. "How?" Illinois asked. "We can't just shoot our way into a Nation of Islam meeting." "We're not going to," Bumpy replied. "We're going to do something smarter." On March 14th, the day before the planned confrontation, Bumpy Johnson did something unexpected. He went to visit Malcolm X. They met at a diner, just the two of them. "Malcolm," Bumpy said, "you're in danger." Malcolm smiled slightly. "I'm always in danger, brother. I mean, from inside, from the nation. Tomorrow night at your meeting." Malcolm's smile faded. "What have you heard?" Bumpy told him everything. Captain Joseph, the plan to confront him, the possibility of violence. Malcolm listened without interrupting. When Bumpy finished, Malcolm was quiet for a long moment. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Harlem needs you," Bumpy said simply. "Whatever's happening inside the nation, that's your business. But if something happens to you, if they silence you, that hurts all of us." Malcolm studied Bumpy's face. "What do you want me to do?" "Don't go to the meeting," Bumpy said. "Or if you do go, let me put some people there, protection." Malcolm shook his head. "I can't have gangsters protecting me at a religious meeting. That would prove everything they're saying about me." "Then what?" Bumpy asked. "I go," Malcolm said firmly. "I face whatever comes. If they have accusations, let them make them publicly. If they want to hurt me, at least everyone will see their true nature." "That's suicide," Bumpy said. "Maybe," Malcolm replied, "but I won't run, I won't hide, and I won't compromise who I am because of threats." Bumpy looked at this man, this stubborn, principled, impossible man, and he understood. Malcolm X would rather die than show fear. It was admirable and incredibly frustrating. "Fine," Bumpy said, "but I'm going to be there anyway. You won't see me, and my people won't interfere unless things go too far, but we'll be there." Malcolm started to protest, but Bumpy held up his hand. "You're not asking me to be there. I'm choosing to be there. There's a difference. You do what you need to do, and I'll do what I need to do." Malcolm finally nodded. March 15th, 1963. The meeting was scheduled for 8 p.m. Bumpy and his people arrived at 6. They They didn't go to the community center. Instead, they positioned themselves strategically. Junie Bird and 2 others went to the building across the street where they could watch everyone entering. Illinois Gordon and 3 more positioned themselves in a store that shared a back alley with the community center. Bumpy himself, along with Nat Pettigrew, entered the community center through a side door and made their way to a storage room directly above the basement meeting room. They could hear everything happening below. At 7:30, Nation of Islam members started arriving. Malcolm X arrived at 7:45, alone. The meeting started at 8. It began normally enough, standard business, community issues, religious teaching. Then, at 8:30, Captain Joseph stood up. "Brothers and sisters," he said, his voice loud and commanding, "we have a serious matter to discuss tonight. There have been rumors, disturbing rumors about Brother Malcolm's loyalty to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad." The room went silent. Malcolm sat perfectly still. "I have heard," Captain Joseph continued, "that Brother Malcolm has been questioning our leader, spreading doubt, preparing to betray the nation that made him." "These are lies," Malcolm said calmly. "I have never betrayed the Honorable Elijah Muhammad or the nation." "Then why have you been meeting secretly with people outside the nation?" Captain Joseph demanded. "Why have you been asking questions about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's personal life?" Malcolm's jaw tightened. "Because I've heard disturbing things, and I have a right to seek truth." "The truth is whatever the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says it is," Captain Joseph shouted. "Your questioning proves you're a traitor." That's when Captain Joseph's men started moving, 5 of them spreading out around Malcolm, cutting off exits. In the storage room above, Bumpy tensed. "Wait," Nat whispered. "Not yet." Below, Malcolm stood his ground. "If you have accusations, make them through proper channels. This ambush proves nothing except your own cowardice." Captain Joseph's face twisted with rage. "You dare call me a coward?" He moved toward Malcolm, and his men moved with him. That's when Bumpy made his move. He and Nat came down the stairs, fast but not running, not threatening.